right, great. Thank you all for being here. This session is really a large update based off of the trust experiments videos that I have recorded and put on YouTube. There are 13 of them. This would be, I guess, number 14, but this will include not only content from the trust experiment, but it will include updates on courses, because this process of trust that I've been going through, capital TRUST, has been extremely revelatory, especially with in terms of what I will describe as psychic debt. And so we'll be talking quite a bit about psychic debt, but the kind of meaning of life, what we're actually looking for, there's nothing that what I've discovered doesn't touch. But most of what I'm talking about, or what I will talk about in terms of psychic debt and trust, is actually not that far under the surface. Now, the depth trust that I'm talking about is actually the deepest part of you. You kind of have to clear out a lot of psychic debt just to get really in touch with that truest you. But the layers of psychic debt, many of them are just under the surface. And so I'd like to talk about that. I'll also be updating on, so I did reach out to my martial arts teacher's teacher to inform him, I reached out to my seniors to inform them of a lie that I told to my teacher as a means of getting out of something that I basically didn't want to do. And I talked about that in trust video, maybe number 12, my greatest shame. And so I reached out to them, and I'm just so thankful to my teacher, Osaki Shizen, because he created such a beautiful environment. And several of my seniors have gotten back to me and were just so gracious and thankful and supportive. One of them even offered to support me on my trip to Japan financially, because it's Nishikido Sensei, to train with Nishikido Sensei privately is a very, very expensive thing, which I won't get into here. But another is actually is going to meet me there. We'll go to Kyushu and we're going to train together. It's a very supportive environment, and they were thankful for me being honest about it, and supported and appreciated the courage that it took to be honest in that way. And so I'll give a little bit of an update on that. And then I wanted to ask you also during this process, what is it that you most want to learn? It could be like a book idea, or it could be a course that we need to, that you feel like might be a good place to explore something deep that I might be able to actually help you learn. If you ask me about golf, sorry, not going to be able to do that. And of course, we'll also do a courses update. We've got several courses that are coming up. Those courses are going to have to be modified based off of what I've discovered through this trust experiment or trust process that I'm going through. It's not really an experiment on my part, because to have an experiment, one has a plan, right? One has designed an experiment. This is not designed, at least consciously. But I feel for many of the audience, you are experimenting with trust. So I titled it the Trust Experiment more as a reflection of probably what you're going through, in that you have heard of the trust process that I'm going through, and you may be kind of exploring trust in yourself. And that's an invitation, certainly, and I'd love to support you in that process. If you have questions, which I highly encourage, please put them in the chat, and you can just take your mouse down to the bottom of the screen. You'll see a little chat window you can type into. And if I need more information from you, I might ask you to unmute yourself and speak. If you would be willing to do so, that'd be great. You'll need a mic in order to do that. If you're shy about being on camera, you might turn off your camera. However, if you are shy to be on camera, I would suggest that might be one of the things that's holding you back in life. You are here, why hide the light? So I would encourage you to, maybe take a risk. And then when you're finished speaking, please remute yourself. And I think that is about it. Let's go ahead and start looking at the text here to see if you guys have any questions. Okay, so someone actually connected the term psychic That actually might be what karma originally meant. I suspect that that is what karma originally meant. And maybe the story got distorted a little bit with other ideas and whatnot. But the essential meaning is that there's something that we accrue. And what it is that we accrue does sort of web out into life and has extraordinary causal effects that we are almost always blind to. That the psychic debt, much of it is just under the surface. For example, one example of the psychic debt was the lie that I told to my teacher, Osaki Shizen. And it was essentially an act of cowardice, if I were to be straight about it. I didn't want to have a hard conversation with him, and I wanted to do something other than what he wanted to do. And so I essentially cheated by deceiving him, right? And we cheat by deceiving people in lots and lots of ways, including ourselves. Later on, I forgot about it, but it remained under the surface, and it was almost like a demerit of my own self-trust. Like, you don't trust yourself as much after that, right? You've all probably had experiences like that, right? And it kind of downgrades your quality of life. Your quality of life improves by dealing with the landscape of psychic debt. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the landscape of psychic debt. Just as you have a map in your imagination or memory of the objective space around you, the room you're in, you can close your eyes, you can probably visualize it. Somehow you know how to get to the market, you know how to get to your friend's house, you know how to get home. That is the mind that is keeping track of the space around you so that you can function. You have a social map, your position amongst your friends in society. You have a map of the story of your life. These are all kind of layers of mind. And a huge, vast layer of mind that's unseen is this layer of psychic debt. It's mapped out there. And the interesting thing about it is you might actually forget stories of your life, right? They'll always be in the subconscious mind. Just as you may forget some of the things that you've done that accrue psychic debt, but they're going to always be in the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is determining, causing your actions, reactions, thoughts, feelings, and the quality of your life, whether you know it or not. Even much of your attitude. There's almost nothing that it doesn't, there maybe is nothing that it doesn't affect. All right. And so that is an essential thing that I'd like to discuss is right now, while we have a few minutes, we'll get into that psychic debt a bit more. So here we've got a statement / question. I'm going to put it in the first person so that the YouTube audience will understand this. It was written in third person. I can feel resistance from just thinking of going into this maze of deceit in the body, a disharmony from actions and true self. That part I don't understand. A disharmony from actions and like a separation of actions from true self, from the guidance of true self. I see. Okay, got it. It reminds me of 12 steps. Yeah, one of the reasons why 12-step program is effective is to some degree it's dealing with psychic debt, honestly, or at least to a degree that people are willing to be honest. Making a list and then making amends. How would you suggest to start? The thought of sharing publicly tarnishes the reputation. Yes, that is the risk. I took that risk to make the video. The question is, am I worried about my reputation, or am I worried about which opinion am I more worried about? Other people's opinions of me or the depth of truth within? Which one would I rather defy? That's what it came down to me. I cannot live a fully realized human being. I cannot live a life as a fully realized human being. And I suspect neither can you, which means you can't fully awaken until you are in alignment with that depth of knowing within. Right. Now, the way in which you get alignment with that depth of knowing within it's not a template. It's not like a philosophy, like you just follow this template. First, you make a YouTube video and then you say, it's not like that. You're going to have to actually consult with the depth of your being and be very, very honest with yourself to find out what you really need to do and where the fears are. And usually where the fears are is actually what you need to do. If you're fearing it, it's probably the hint that that's what you need to do. but it's not my life quality, it's yours. And so I have to leave that to you. That said, there are certain things that where you are right now, as I mean, just I'm speaking to the general audience and where I was, that you simply will not be willing to do. Even if you know that's the next step, you're not willing to go there. And you may think you are never willing to go there. But that also may be a lie. Give yourself time and space, explore honestly as you can, and let the process take on a life of its own. Now, with this question, there's a lot of danger to this very conversation, because much of the psychic debt that's holding us back from awakening, from being totally in alignment with the essence of our being, is just under the surface. And there are certain things, and there are many different flavors and layers of this psychic debt. Take on many forms. There are many of these forms of psychic debt that I can't even talk about here. Just bringing it up, it'll flash a light bulb in your mind and open up an area that you might not want to deal with. And this is not just a message for the people here. Many of you are regular meditation students of mine, have been through the Ocean of Awareness course, which has prepared you more to navigate this field of psychic debt than would other people be prepared, so that you don't have a psychic break when this information comes up that has been suppressed because of the horrific nature of what we thought, did, whatever. The incredible depth of shame, blame, guilt, and arrogance that's trapped in the body, stagnating there, that when we see, it just completely knocks us on our heels, right? So there's a lot of this that I really won't be able to talk about here, but maybe we'll have a more advanced course at some point. I suspect, actually, I know right now, I know this is true. The course that's called The Year of Awakening, it's unavoidable. It's going to go strongly into psychic debt. I don't believe there's any way around it. There's too many people involved in that course already that have watched those videos and have interest in it. It's just funnel. It's going to funnel right into. I might change the topic, the title of it, The Year of Psychic Debt. It might as well be that, or Trust and Psychic Debt or something. I maybe just change the title, but it will be a year of that exploration. All right. I hope I answered the question. The question was, how public do you recommend we go? I don't recommend anything. I recommend in terms of what specifically you ought to do besides get in touch with your body, be honest and ask, and notice what you really fear doing. That's probably a hint of where you need to go. Trust. So there's a question is, by what you were saying, does trust sit in our cellular levels? The psychic debt surely does. Trust is actually prior. The fundamental trust, I feel, is actually prior to, or like at the very foundation of existence. There's no way for me to prove it, but just as I see it, everything at a fundamental level is conscious. In other words, it has perception. The level of perception should not be equated exactly to intelligence as you and I think of as intelligent, which is a highly self-absorbed, human-centric view of intelligence, right? But there is fundamentally perception going on in everything, including the atoms and the walls. And at that level, that's where that fundamental trust is. And it is a truth. And it may be the truth that sets you free, so to speak. That's a reference to something Jesus says, but like literally speaking, the process of gravitating toward that trust. So whether that's what any particular guru in the past meant or not, I don't know, but I do find the statement interesting. So with that being said, going back to the question, does it sit at the cellular level? I would suggest that it sits at the atomic level, it sits at the subatomic level, it sits at the cellular level, it sits at all levels of being. There's nothing that it doesn't touch. Although your daily window of perception, the egoic mind, is not aware of it. Of course, there's much that it's not aware of. So that's normal. I've been doing this for a while, very painful, but worth it. Do you agree that the debt's shadows, when appear consciously or unconsciously, that they can show up as physical pain, and in my personal journey, I've found this traveling and clearing its way up in my body, showing itself in pains, boils, etc. Okay, so the sentences are a bit difficult to. I'm going to try and unpack what the sentences are here. I'm guessing that the meaning is asking, does the psychic debt actually affect our physical health? Does it have physical ramifications? And yes, indeed, it does seem to have profound physical ramifications. It has psychological ramifications. There's nothing that it doesn't touch in your life. Now, that would be unfair for me to inverse and say every physical sickness you have is a result of psychic debt. I'm not willing to go there because I can't prove it. But it does seem that every physical sickness I have relates to psychic debt. In other words, I can see all the connections. That doesn't mean that it's totally a perfect causal thing. I don't like to come to hard conclusions like that, because that blinds you. It blinds me. The idea is to remain softly open and clear and centered so that I can explore. And that exploring leads to seeing. As soon as you get hard and you come to conclusions, you blind yourself. And you can't actually be in touch anymore with that depth of awareness at the absolute bottommost foundation of being. But yes, it does seem that there's certainly a correlation between, at least from my experience so far, physical ailments and psychic debt. And that psychic debt isn't just limited to you. You experience, if you have any type of psychic debt that resonates with psychic debt that other people have, you're being influenced by their psychic debt, and you are influencing theirs. So this is not stopping at your body. This is it's an aspect of the mass consciousness, certainly amongst human beings, at least. I would learn about the cleansing for the whole and where the theory comes from. It's an observation that I've had through this exploration of trust where it comes from. It comes from the depth of exploration. It doesn't come from anything I've ever read or heard. I don't do that. I don't like to, in a lot of ways, I can't read books on these types of topics. And one of the reasons and this is probably just a justification for that, but one of the reasons that I'm going to describe here as a justification is I don't want to bias my mind. I want it to some conclusion that somebody else came to, because I used to do a lot of exploration of herbs and things. I had lots of herbal books. And I noticed that there was this pattern of a certain herb that every book said was poisonous, which I knew wasn't poisonous. And it's because, like 150 years ago, someone wrote a book that said it was poisonous. And everybody else read that book and then said it was poisonous. Someone else read that book and then wrote a book on their own and said it's poisonous. They're just stealing from each other. And nobody credits anybody. The same thing happens in teachings. You think it doesn't? Certainly does. So I've given up this idea of relying on other people for information. It doesn't mean I don't pay attention to other people. I mean, I spent many years training in the martial arts, which is profoundly educational in terms of the psyche and the body, awareness. Not because I just don't want to listen to anybody, but the exploration, your own exploration, is essential, and there's no getting around it. And if you don't do that exploration, then whatever information is floating around your mind just becomes skepticism or belief, neither of which are particularly helpful. Right? You see it? How would you actually know? You'll know because you'll apply it to your life and find out. And I mean, you're here anyway. You're walking the green mile. What else are you going to do with your time? You might explore, right? You might explore, or you could just play it safe. Personally, I prefer the exploration, but it's up to you. It's your life. All right. If Purification. Most of my body parts are going into pain. Some of the symptoms of agitation, or some symptoms of agitation. Aha, interesting, because at this time, many mental, emotive agitations, my reading terrible, because at this time, many mental, emotive agitations. No wonder my body is mirroring this. Wow, yes, that's probably the case for a lot of people. Yeah, somebody says it's amazing. Yes, it really is. This is the most profound. I mean, I don't think there's anything that you could do that will be more interesting than just an absolute exploration of trust within your own body and psychic debt. It is just absolutely fascinating. And what will happen is, as you go through this exploration, you will develop the eyes to see. You will start to see in other people things that they themselves are completely unaware of. And it will be very obvious. It'll be hard for you to explain to anybody how you see it, because you're coming from a perspective that they haven't yet even stepped on, they haven't touched upon yet. Is the subconscious mind a psychological term for the soul or universal consciousness? So let's look at subconscious. Let's say that conscious is that which you're perceiving. So we're just using language that's been used for a while, and there are limits to this language. And then there a vast majority of the motivating forces in your life are unseen. So they're by definition unconscious or subconscious. That's all I mean. But the source of your being is also not within your conscious awareness. So that would be subconscious, would it not? The irony is that we tend to think, we tend to call the essence of our being consciousness. Why would we call the thing that we're most blind to consciousness if we're most blind to it? I'm going to leave you with that exploration. Fascinating exploration, by the way. And I'm not going to give up the secret of that one right now. Don't be lazy. I'm just teasing you. All right. What role does fear play in this process? Fear is a love letter from you to you. That's what it is. Do you want to read the letter, or you want to turn away from it? That's it. It plays everything in this process. Hopefully that answered the question. I'm a little spicy today. Sorry about that. Do you believe that molecular level of trust can be altered to fear? I'm not sure what that question means. Or is that we have gained, or is it that we have gained awareness of that deep level? Could you ask that question verbally? I'm not sure what is meant there, or maybe type it in again.
I'll just verbalize it. Because we're always that pure divine being, that's that awareness that is within all the molecular at the smallest level. But I'm wondering if it's actually like different when we're experiencing fear and we feel it viscerally. Is it that that structure has moved from trust to fear, or underneath that fear is trust, I guess is the question.
Well, certainly underneath that fear is trust, but what I would suggest is that the equation that we are a pure divine being, how do you know that that's the case? Is that something you just want to believe? Something that we've been told? How do we know? What does it even mean to be pure? What does it mean to be divine? I mean, we're playing with words here that I'm not sure any of us could even agree upon. Like, we had just like a whole bunch of people say what they mean by divine and pure and all of that. Would we all come to the same conclusion? And are we even conscious of what we words, or do they just sort of have a fluffy feeling? These are all things. These are serious questions. I'm not being rude to you. These are serious questions that are worth exploring. Well, they're certainly an exploration. But when we have the exploration, we might find that the essence of you is all potential, which means it has the potential to do fear too, to be mean. I mean, is that not what's happening in our lives? Right? Well, if that is the essence, if the essence of being is only always happy, how could that possibly be the case? Right? Now, the interesting thing is the essence of being, when it has a certain, let's see, when it is aware of its own nature without conclusions and judgments, it is happy. When it plays the game of psychic debt, it's not happy. But it is just a game. In a lot of ways, it's a game of self-distraction. Why not? I mean, if you were an eternal being with no actual objective world, and it's just consciousness projecting, why not play a game? I mean, that's what happens. It's playing a game. And it's like, people think this person is awakening and that person's like somebody that's like maybe the worst violent prisoner. And that, let's imagine that this idea that some person is more spiritually advanced than others is just a self-absorbed story, and it doesn't reflect reality at all. That there's just this infinite conscious zero that has a game to play. Why not? And so it's essentially leaping into a story. The further the leap away from self-awareness, the more distorted and disharmonious your life becomes. If you took a tiny little leap, you'd awaken like on day one, you'd be like awake as a baby, go through your life as a teacher, but no one understanding what you're teaching because you haven't been through all the suffering. You'd just be this divine being in everybody's eyes, but you wouldn't have anything that you could actually teach. You just have presence. And then your body would die or whatever, and you'd go back to the whole thing. I mean, come on, that's cowardly. You hardly took a leap at all, right? And some people took this giant leap where they're like so far removed from their self-awareness of essential being that they are like monsters, even in their own estimation. Maybe they were the most courageous individuals. I mean, I don't know if that's actually, but it's actually, it's better to look at things in that way instead of just judging. We don't know what we're seeing. And it's very arrogant to assume that the people that on the surface appear to be wretched and terrible aren't also that essential nature of being, consciousness. We're running out of time and there's so much to discuss. All right, so as you can see, there's a lot here to be conveyed, and we're just touching the surface. And so I'm going to have to get to, so first, getting back to Nishikido Sensei, my teacher's teacher, he has accepted me to come and train with him. So at some point when I have the time, the money, and health, I will go to Japan, and hopefully he doesn't pass away before then. We will see. But it's wonderful to hear that he will train me for, we're going to meet in Kyushu and train for a couple of days privately in a Japanese traditional inn. That should be nice. And then I'll spend another week or two with Matsumura Sensei, that's just my senior, and we will refine from there. So I did want to throw that out there. We're running out of time, so I'm just kind of going through things quickly. Let's see. I wanted to ask you guys, what is it that you most want to learn? Like if you could have a book that I would write or a course that I would teach, what is it? And maybe type that in now. I'll go through and talk about the courses while you might be typing, and then answer those questions in a bit. So we have in June a facilitator training for those who want to learn to facilitate meditation. That's unchanged. There is a maximum of 10 slots. I just, with my health and whatnot, I'm just not sure I can teach that. It's going to require a lot of interaction on my part with people. I'm not sure I can physically do that. There's also a limitation on space. There's the week prior to that, which I believe is the second week of June, we will have a Warriors Meditation Retreat in Southern Oregon, where I'll be working with you physically to open up aspects of the meditation that you're not yet aware of, and especially the physical aspects that oftentimes get overlooked or unseen entirely. And so that will be fun. That's a week, and I think I failed to include the deadline for that course on my website. The deadline to register. The deadline is May 15th. So you've got basically a month for anybody who's interested. The slots are very limited, so if you wait till the last minute, it's probably not a wisest idea. I'd like to be able to just open it up to as many people as possible, but it's just logistically not possible. And I'm not sure I have the physical constitution for it at this point. I still, regarding my body, I guess I should talk a little bit about that. My health has improved dramatically. Just yesterday, I became able to actually start writing again. I've not written anything since this whole process began like 4 months ago. I couldn't type because my arms would go numb, especially my left hand, and then be painful later on for a long time. So that's started. I've got the Genesis Code Spanish, French, and German edition that were finished translated 4 months ago, but I couldn't actually format or work with them to publish them because I couldn't move my arms. So that's all processing. It's in the works. Things are going in the right direction in terms of productivity. The Year of Awakening course, I did talk about that a little bit. It seems like that course, it will start in, I postponed it so that it starts in the very end of June, so that the who's in that course just know that I pushed it back about a week, maybe. The essential thing to know there is that course, based off of your questions here, what I've experienced in the last 4 months and what I've seen, that course is going to rapidly funnel into the trust exploration and the psychic debt exploration. And so we're going to be exploring maybe many, many layers of psychic debt, depending on how willing you all are. The Year of Awakening will start about a week later, almost beginning was before. So those who are already signed up, please take a note of that. And the course, the Year of Awakening, I might as well just change the title to something like Psychic Debt and Trust, because I guarantee you it's going to funnel into that like almost immediately. That's where my body is, and that's where so many of you are because of the trust experiment videos. You don't join the course unless you're really willing to see some very uncomfortable things, to go into the depths of your being with the intention of fully trusting your essential nature. If that's what you really want, Year of Awakening's for you. And if it's not, avoid at all costs. All right. I'd like you to write a book about being a parent. I've never been a parent, so I can't write a book about it. I generally don't like to write about things I don't know that much about. I've taught a lot of junior high school students, but that's not the same thing as being a parent. I could write a book about how to mentor children, which might in itself be very helpful, because parents ultimately are mentors if they are able to navigate their relationship well. So someone said, how to unravel our conditioned behaviors and fears and be more in charge of ourselves. Yes, that is a book that I am currently writing. The challenge with books, and this is the same thing with this YouTube video here, there's going to be people in the audience that haven't been through certain foundational training or development in their awareness. So there's certain things I just kind of can't talk about. A book is the same thing. It's a public entity in a way. Anybody could read it. So it's really difficult to deal with. There are books out there on shadow. I find that almost I have not found anybody who's talking about the types of psychic debt that I discovered. And I don't know why that's the case. Maybe others have discovered it as well and don't talk about it because they know that it will lead to psychics and people and suicide and that sort of thing. It's a really delicate line. I'm not sure really how to navigate it myself unless I was actually mentoring people and watching them through the process so that I could keep track of where they are and intervene if it was necessary. Can't do that with a book. It's rough. And it's something that the world seems to really need to know now. All of the problems that are going on, all of the craziness is to read it. So I suspect that the craziness of the world right now, all this chaos and uncertainty and all the judgmentality and all the suppression and this attempt to control everything with deceit and lies and all of that, it's a reflection of a tremendous buildup of psychic debt that is at all levels of society, including each individual. And I suspect that it comes largely from the internet. We just have access to so much information. Our lives are sped up so quickly, and that so much of the information is clickbait and try to get you to be judgmental and negative. It's just compounding the psychic, just compounding psychic debt. We're just overloaded with it. And it would be great if there was a way to safely get this information out to the world, but I'm not sure how to do it at this point. Maybe that will be revealed at some point soon. How to be clear in communications and relationships. Yes, that of course first starts with being clear with yourself. And that again means getting in touch with trust. Maybe about how to communicate with unconscious people or who are not valuing looking inward. Yes, this is something that I've been working on recently, how to actually communicate with people that are highly unconscious without bringing out the worst in them. Yes, how to communicate with people that are not interested in inner awareness and people that are have put up strong walls to prevent clarity. So much noise, we couldn't do anything. Internet connections have been crazy as well. And I've been quite busy with everything else. And I do need to be signing off now. Thank you all for coming here. I hope you found the discussion helpful. Sorry about the time rush, but I basically have been unable to work for 4 months, and I've got such a backlog of things to get to at this point that it's a mountain, and I can only do one step at a time. So thank you all so much. Also, if people in the future would like to be invited to, if you're like a YouTube audience member, you'd like to be invited to my notifications to be to be able to join these live sessions, you go to my website, just richardlhaight.com, and there'll be a little pop-up that will ask you to enter your email address, and you can be notified of things like this in the future. Thank you so much.